A woman kneels in the dirt. Her fingers dig into the earth with practiced intention, not searching, but retrieving. She knows exactly what she is looking for. She has always known. The plant she pulls free is unremarkable to look at. Pale roots, a faint chemical smell. It would mean nothing to you if you walked past it. But she knows what it does to the mind. This is not a modern story. This moment has been happening for at least 50,000 years, long before cities, long before language as we understand it, long before anything we might call civilization. Human beings were deliberately seeking altered states of consciousness. The question is not whether they did it, the evidence is overwhelming. The question is something stranger, something more uncomfortable. The question is why did they feel they had to? In 2009, researchers excavating a burial site in the Altai Mountains uncovered something that upended several confident assumptions. Inside a 2,500-year-old tomb belonging to a young woman, a presumed shaman, they found leather pouches. Inside those pouches, cannabis seeds, not scattered, not accidental, carefully stored, deliberately placed. The mainstream assumption had been that ritual intoxicant use was a late cultural development, a symbol of excess. That assumption was wrong, because archaeology had been quietly accumulating evidence across every continent, from every era. They called it the intoxicant hypothesis, not just that ancient humans used psychoactive substances, but that the drive to alter consciousness may be one of the oldest features of human behavior we have ever documented. In the Amazonian rainforest, there exists a plant combination that should not work. Ayahuasca requires two separate plants to activate. One contains DMT. The other contains a chemical that prevents your body from breaking DMT down before it reaches your brain. There are roughly 80,000 plant species in the Amazon. The odds of accidentally discovering this combination are statistically negligible, and yet, indigenous communities across the Amazon have been using it for thousands of years. When researchers ask how this knowledge was developed, without chemistry, without microscopes, the most common answer is simple: the plants told us. That answer is easy to dismiss. It is also, when you sit with it long enough, profoundly unsettling, because embedded within it is a suggestion that altered states may have produced genuine knowledge, knowledge that took Western science thousands of years and millions of dollars to begin to verify. For most of the 20th century, archaeologists believed humans farmed because they needed food. Grain was grown, settlements formed, civilization followed. Then researchers re-examined Gobekli Tepe, the world's oldest known monumental architecture built before agriculture. They found large stone vessels, dozens of them, sized and shaped for mass fermentation. Gobekli Tepe was, among other things, a site for the communal consumption of alcohol. Perhaps humans did not first farm to eat and then drink. Perhaps they first fermented, and the cultivation of grain began to ensure a reliable supply of alcohol. Not sustenance driving agriculture, but ritual. Every civilization that has ever existed has fermented something, not as an accident, as a goal. In 2016, researchers at Johns Hopkins gave patients with severe treatment-resistant depression a single controlled dose of psilocybin. The results were difficult to explain. Over 80% showed significant reduction in depressive symptoms. Many described a dissolution of the boundary between self and world. Not euphoria. Meaning. Psilocybin disrupts a network in the brain called the default mode network, the neural architecture of the self. When that network quiets, the mind expands into something it normally cannot access. Ancient cultures had no word for the default mode network, but they had deep empirical knowledge of what happened when it went silent. They called it enlightenment, communion, the death and rebirth of the soul. The language was metaphorical. The experience, the researchers now reluctantly concede, was real. For nearly 2,000 years, the most powerful people in the ancient Mediterranean world made a pilgrimage to Eleusis, Cicero, Plato, Marcus Aurelius, all initiates, all marked by it. The recipe of their ritual drink was kept secret for 2,000 years under penalty of death. No one told. In 2020, researchers found ergot in a ceramic vessel from the ritual site. Ergot is a fungus containing compounds chemically similar to LSD. The founding philosophy of Western civilization may have been written under the influence of a psychedelic brew. Here is something rarely said plainly. The human brain is already saturated with its own psychoactive chemicals: DMT, endorphins, serotonin, dopamine. The mind is, at baseline, a pharmaceutical factory. You do not experience reality directly. You experience a chemical simulation of reality. What you call consciousness is already, in the most precise scientific sense, a hallucination. When ancient humans consumed psychoactive plants, they were not escaping reality. They were adjusting the parameters of the machine that constructs it. The cave paintings at Lascaux and Altamira share a quality that is difficult to describe. The animals are not drawn as they appear in daylight. They move, they overlap, they appear to emerge from the stone itself as though the wall is a membrane between two worlds. The neuropsychologist David Lewis Williams concluded these images were not decorative. They represent what the human visual cortex produces under conditions of trance. The artists were not representing the external world. They were mapping an interior one, the landscape of consciousness at its edges, where the self dissolves. Somewhere between the Paleolithic cave and the modern city, humanity made a decision, not a conscious one, a slow collective drift away from the altered state as a technology of meaning and toward the altered state as a symbol of disorder. The shaman became the addict. The sacred plant became the scheduled substance, a category of human experience that had been the province of the wisest members of a community was reclassified, criminalized, erased, and yet the drive never disappeared. It went underground. It survived in music and in mysticism, in fasting and in fever. The capacity was never lost, only the permission. The woman kneeling in the dirt still has her hands in the earth. She is not self-destructing. She is doing something her ancestors did in every culture, on every continent, for as long as human beings have been human beings. She is reaching for the edge of what the mind can be, and the question that archaeology, neuroscience, and anthropology are now slowly beginning to ask is whether she was ever wrong to. And the question that archaeology, neuroscience, and anthropology are now slowly beginning to ask is whether she was ever wrong to.